Just when you thought the Kuma flashback couldn't get any sadder, Oda decided to hit us just one more time by showing us just how low the world government was willing to go. By revealing that in order to make sure Kuma kept up his deal of never meeting Bonney again, they went so far as to even tear up the letters he sent to her. 10 times a month, Kuma would pour all of his love into writing Bonney a letter, telling her about all of the exciting islands and places he visited on his journey. And that's an impressive amount. Like, I don't think I even sent 10 emails in a year while I was in university, and those go almost instantly to the recipient. While Kuma had to send all of his letters by messenger bird, which would have to travel from wherever he was in the world all the way back to the Sorbet Kingdom, which probably took days to do. And his whole thing becomes even more impressive if it turns out that he used the same messenger bird each time. And he did this all because even though he knew he could never meet Bonney again, and that very soon he would essentially die as a human, he wanted to make sure that Bonney knew she wasn't abandoned, and to give her a lifetime's worth of parental love in the short amount of time he had left. Which again, dude, it just makes you look at what Alpha does in this chapter and makes you ask, but why you do this? Like, okay, I can understand her reading the letters, scanning through them to make sure Kuma's not telling Bonney where he is exactly or where he's going, checking to see if there's any hints of him scheming to somehow rescue her. I get it. That's her job. But after reading them and seeing that they're just harmless letters to his daughter, why still destroy them? And the only answer I can think of is that Alpha is simply just a bitch. And I was going to put here in the script that technically you could argue that maybe Alpha was trying to prepare Bonney for the inevitable future where Kuma becomes a full-on cyborg and the letters will stop anyway. But no. There's absolutely no defending her actions in this chapter, which makes it so much more satisfying when Bonney uses her distorted future at the end of the chapter to knock Alpha clear out of the sky. Which, by the by, I think it's time we all finally sit down and talk about exactly how incredibly broken Bonney's devil fruit is. Like, prior to the Egghead arc, I already considered her fruit to be one of the stronger ones in One Piece, like maybe breaking the top 20 we've seen, due to her being able to instantly turn others into literal children, or age them up to be practically on death's door. But dude, after the reveal of Distorted Future, her fruit stocks have to have shot up to the top 10, maybe even top 5 alongside fruits like Law's, because her fruit basically allows her to do and become whatever she wants. Theoretically, if she wanted to, she could transform herself into a future version that ate the Goro Goro no Mi, and then bam, instantly she has the power of the former world's strongest man. Or, because we see her transform herself into a version that became Nika, that means she's not just limited to Paramecias, she can also do this with Zoans. Which means we could see her transform herself into a future version where she ends up eating Kaido's fruit, and then bam again, we have a new pink dragon to deal with. And honestly, the only question I have right now is whether or not she can do this with Logias as well. And everything we've seen so far about this power would say that the answer has to be yes. So again, I think it's time we start talking about moving this fruit up the tier list, because the only two weaknesses I could see it having are if there's a time limit to how long she can transform herself, which I assume there has to be. I don't think Oda would let her fruit be that broken. And if strong enough Haki is able to negate the fruit's abilities, which again, I assume it can, at the very least when she does it to others, which we know she can as we see her do it to both Luffy and Chopper in the beginning of Egghead. And I guess the only other weakness to this will be Bonnie's own imagination. Like, if she can't imagine a power that would get her out of a situation, then she wouldn't be able to access that possible future where she has that power. It's easy to understand now how her ship quickly went from being a simple fisherman's boat out on the search for her father to one of the most infamous New Age pirate ships in the world, earning her both the title of Supernova and then later on a member of the worst generation, with the Navy most likely hunting her down to keep Kuma under control, and her using its power to take them out. Honestly, knowing what we do now about how powerful Bonnie's devil fruit is, I'm really struggling to see exactly how Blackbeard managed to capture her. But then again, Blackbeard is the king of winning off-panel fights that on paper he should theoretically lose. I mean, just look at what happened between him and Law. 1 minute, Law is winning that fight pretty easily, and then we cut away from it, and then the next time we check back in, Law has been defeated, and we have no idea exactly how Blackbeard managed to do it. Oh, and real quick, going back to her ship, it was heartwarming to find out that Gio, Tots, and Potato, wild names by the way, and yet they fit perfectly with Bonnie's food theme, but it was nice finding out that they purposely remodeled their fishing boat to look more like a pizza to make Bonney happy while they're on their journey to find Kuma. And honestly, these guys, since Bonney first showed up on Sorbet, hell, even going all the way back to after their first meeting with Kuma, have been such great friends and allies to his family that it once again breaks your heart to remember that in the current day, they are currently locked up by the Marines. Like before all this, they were just nameless faces on her crew that had no impact on the overall story, and now, okay, well technically they still have no impact on the overall story, but they do have names now, and now that we know what we do about their involvement in both Kuma and Bonnie's lives, I hope at some point in the near future of One Piece we get to see them reunited with their captain. Now moving backwards to the beginning of the chapter, we find out exactly why Kuma headed to the Goa Kingdom. He specifically went there to see Luffy. And now we finally know why only Kuma knew Dragon had a child when even Ivankov didn't. And it's because Kuma just happened to notice that Dragon happened to be going to a certain village in the Goa Kingdom over and over again to see a certain child there. Although we do know that Dragon kept his distance from Luffy because at no point did he actually ever meet Luffy in person, due to the fact that we know that Luffy had no idea he even had a dad up until Garp told him. And Dragon's line about how a parent's only weakness is their child is such a relevant message to Kuma, because had Saturn not discovered Bonney, then he would have nothing to hold over Kuma, and Kuma's life would be completely different in the current day. So it makes sense why Kuma would agree to keep Dragon's child a secret. Though, that being said, with the world knowing that Dragon is Garp's son, and Garp being so open about the fact that Luffy is his grandson, it really doesn't take much to connect the dots between Dragon and Luffy. Though I guess the connection between the two of them doesn't really become relevant until Luffy gains a bit of fame and infamy as a pirate, but even still, this still makes Luffy an easy mark for Dragon's enemies to use against him. All that to say, Dragon, dude, go visit your kid. Oh, and one more thing. I think Kuma seeing Luffy in this chapter confirms what I've always thought about Kuma's intentions back on Thriller Bark. That at no point was he ever really going to execute Luffy, but instead he was simply just testing the resolve of Luffy's companions, seeing just how far they were willing to go to protect Dragon's son. A test which obviously they passed. Anyway, in other news, we see that Vegapunk is close to turning Egghead into the futuristic island that we know it as today, and he's already cut off the top of his head, meaning that he's already created at least a few of the satellites. And we also get to see Stussy in this chapter, which only served to remind me that we still need to find out if she survived being stabbed by Luffy. Honestly, I hope she does, because at this point, if Bonney doesn't end up sailing with Luffy and the crew after Egghead, then I'm kind of rooting for Stussy too. And now, by the end of the chapter, we are only 6 months away from Kuma becoming a full-on cyborg, which means I believe we now caught up to the beginning of One Piece. So you would think that this would mark the end of Kuma's flashback, but I wouldn't be surprised if Oda manages to pull out just one more chapter and uses it to make a jaw-dropping reveal about Kuma, Bonney, or even Vegapunk that will change everything we currently know about the Egghead arc.